Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to keep my camera off just for the bandwidth and also sharing a PowerPoint with you all to hopefully help you all with the 209 reporting. So the criteria this year did change. Some of you have probably already seen the slide, but wanted to put that out again. So it changed in a way that we specified some of the requirements more geared towards MNCC. So we still have that large fire, 300 acres of grass or 100 acres of timber. Did want to specify also that if you list timber as a fuel source or a fuel model in a 100-acre fire, it's going to meet that threshold of needing a 209. So if it is 99 acres of grass, but it did burn into timber, and you listed timber as a fuel model, and that fire goes over 100 acres, it's going to require 209. So that does meet that criteria. So if a Minix Type 3 team is mobilized, firefighter civilian injury, firefighter civilian death, loss of a structure, residential or commercial. And when we're talking about a structure, we're talking about a structure that has significant value or one that can be, I like to think of it like, would it be listed as an outbuilding of some sort? So if it is a knockdown, half on the ground structure, it might not meet the criteria as a structure. So you have a little leeway in deciding like what a structure is. So I've gotten a lot of calls already this year of, is this outhouse that's half fallen down considered a structure? So use your best judgment on that. Significant structures threatened, kind of that same thing. Is, the backwoods outhouse that hasn't been utilized in a long time, a significant structure, you can make that decision. National resource commitment of a type 1 or type 2 resource working longer than one operational period. And then fires burning in extensive mop-up fuels. That's your peats, your blowdowns, not your one little peat pocket that got, turned over a couple times, was put out during that one operational period, but those extensive fuels where it's burning in a large area of peat or blowdown. And then fires with significant access challenges, and then escaped RXs with needs more than the one operational period. So the 209 form has a lot of area in it that some of it has asterisks that are showing required. Some of it is missing asterisks on the form itself that is put out by NWCG, that when I go in to put it into the actual 209 program is a required field. So I've kind of laid this out for you where it shows you your form and why I've highlighted the form for you. And for the ones that have our Minnesota DNR employees and have access to the SharePoint. And if you don't, Ryan has the form that he can throw into the chat. So you also have access to it to look at. And I've laid it out so you can see your form, why it has yellow on it, and my side of Intel and what I have to work with in the actual 209 program. So
That
it
form is
will
in the
feed.
chat and it's also under files. If you go up into the recap of the chat, you can go into files and access that form. So it's there for everybody.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan. When I'm presenting, I don't get to watch that. So I appreciate that. So it starts with that incident name. And when they're CAD incidents, that will feed for me. And then the incident number will feed for me. But if you look, I mean, right off of number 1 and 2 on the NWCG form versus the program, like number 2 is not asterisked, but it's a requirement in the program. Number 2 is required. I have to have that incident number. Number 3, it has to be that initial, updated, or final. So the first one that you send me has to be an initial. It can be an initial and a final if there isn't going to be a follow-up 209 needed. And then number 4 is the incident commander. And I also need the agency or organization that that individual is working for. So a lot of people just list, last name, but don't give me necessarily who they're working for. In Minnesota, we have fire departments that are icing our fires. We pull from different agencies. I really need you to list me who they are working for because it's required. It's not going to let me send this form without knowing that information. And then number 5 is also a required field. And so I listed for you when I drop down. So I have a drop down on my side of the program. And what it's asking for, is it a type 5 IC, type 4 IC, type 3 IC? Is it a type 3 team? Right now, it still differentiates between a type 2 team, type 1 team, or is it area command? So those are in that drop down what I get to choose from. And then it also has the box where I can check if it's unified command. So 5 is required, and that is what information, the only information I get to put in that box. So that's another required field. Type 6, like I know it's central time zone. It's going to automatically populate out of CAD the date and time that this incident was started. So when you start that incident in CAD, that's going to auto-populate that date and time. 7, it's going to send me through CAD the current size. So whatever you have in CAD as the current size is what is going to populate in there. But I like you to also add the current size so I can verify that what you have entered into CAD is what you are also claiming on this initial 209 is the current size of the fire that you're reporting on for this operational period that you're reporting on. It doesn't asterisk 8 on either of the programs, but they're going to not let it go through the approval process without having something put in there. So I need to at least touch this box that it's 0% contained. And if it's going to stay 0% contained in this operational period, we can hit 0 and 0. Or if you feel that it's 0% contained now, but by the end of this reporting period, it might go up to 20% contained. That's what they're looking to gain. So that's what we're putting in box 8. Box 9, 209s are reported on either wildfires or prescribed fires. So if you have like a civilian injury, a death, you lose a structure on a prescribed fire, but it doesn't quite meet the criteria of a wildfire at that point. Um, that's what we'd be reporting on for 209, so they can be submitted also on a prescribed fire. So those are the two that we would report in box 9 under that incident type. The description is not required. The cause has to be filled out. So it's either going to be undetermined, human, or natural. And then as you can see on my report in box 9, it's also a required field, is that monitor, confined, point zone protection, or full suppression has to equal 100%. And that's not even listed on your box 9 in your form anywhere. Or does it even indicate that that's an option for your form? So when I'm calling you or looking for it, that's a big oversight, I think, on the form, but that's where it's coming from. And then 10 also is asterisk. I can't move past on my form without it being filled out. It's not asterisk on your form, so I highlighted it for you. And that's that incident complexity level. So is it type 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or a complex incident? And if you want to give a description to why it's that, you sure can. There's a box for it. And then the time that you're reporting from. So when you start reporting until, the end of this report, that's going to be your from and your to date. So any questions on this first little part of your form considered the header information on a 209?
Billion, there's some stuff in the chat, so I figured I'd kind of go over it because I was replying while you were talking.
Okay, good. Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
see it, so.
that's okay. Some questions on what we would classify as buildings, and I basically said, is it usable or habitable? Jody came back with, could it be used for insurance or that type of thing? And if that makes people understand it a little more, that's fine. But I don't want to get into the weeds on whether it was insured or not or any of that stuff. So use the usable, habitable type thing.
Yeah.
And then type 1 and 2 resources, those are those national assets. And I think it's kind of evident on this slide here, kind of what those fall into. So that's important to recognize. Type 2 crews, type 1 crews, incident management teams, type 1 and 2 helicopters or scoopers or that type of stuff. Complex incident management teams are going to be type 1 until they change the application. And then with regard to the suppression strategies, DNR is always going to be 100% full suppression. So if it's a DNR fire, we can default it to 100% full suppression. If it's fire in conjunction with another agency, BIA, Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Forest Service, Park Service, there might be another strategy there for their portion of the fire. So that's where the unified command conversation and getting that other strategy in place would be important.
Right.
And then I had one more thought, and I was going to say, when in doubt, on the incident complexity level, if it's only a single resource that you're dispatching to the fire and it's going to be down and out, that's a type 5. Otherwise, if you're dispatching a couple resources and they're going to be a while there, then use type 4. So if you need a default thing to put in there, probably use a type 4, because then you're capturing the low type 3 and the high type 5. So when in doubt, that's probably your safest bet to put in there for the initial 209.
Perfect. Is that all the questions out there?
Hey, Jolene, I had a question.
Okay.
So in box 8, where it says percent contained, and then the next one says completed, you're not looking for that. You're looking for the percent contained and completed, and then your expected contained and completed by the end of that time period.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, like when I'm actually working in the program, I mean, you hover over this and it gives you this big long description of, you know, how to be filling this out per se. And that's what they're during this operational period, what's the percent that they're looking will be contained in this reporting period that we're reporting from, you know, from to kind of thing. And I did PDF this PowerPoint and put it in to your guys's how-to guides section as well for you to reference. All right, so we're going to move into the locations tab if we covered everything. So the only the state obviously is going to auto-populate as well. The county is going to feed. The closest city they like to have not required. It shows that 20 in here in your actual form is a required field. However, in the actual program, these are grayed out. I cannot change them. And so 21 is the only one that I can edit. And the only options that I have for that field are going to be the areas in which I have on our SIT report. So it's going to be our MN1AS, like your unit IDs, the Minnesota chip. When we're looking at Fish and Wildlife Service or the BIA, it's going to be MNCMR, MNMNA. That is the only thing. So I don't ever get to decipher that it is like private land ownership or anything of that nature. These two fields are grayed out. So it shows that I can edit that. I know that it'll come back, and especially when the teams are involved, they really like to decipher that. And there's nothing I can do to change that. So it's actually 21 that's the required field, and I'm limited to the unit IDs that we SIT report on. So the Latin long autofills off of your CAD incident. We don't need to enter the legal unless someone feels that they really want that. But I do have to enter that short location description. So I highlighted that on your forms as well. And on your forms, I guess they've asterisked the city. So I typically enter the city because you guys enter the city. And if I don't have it entered by you guys, I'll typically use the city that you put in your short location description. Any questions on the location? Hearing none. All right. I think this is the one that we run into the hardest challenges with, and it's because of the way that it's worded on the NWCG form. And it's because it's listed as significant events for this time period. On my side of it, it's observed fire behavior or significant incident events. But when they're saying significant incident events, they're talking about regarding the fire behavior. And so I have these drop downs of the general fire behavior. So my options are to pick from extreme, active, moderate, or minimal. And then I have to pick a minimum of one additional general fire behavior. And that's going to be your crowning, running, flanking, backing, creeping, torching, group torching, spotting, something of that nature. So that's what I have to work off of. And so even when we're getting down to like our final 209 where there isn't a whole lot of fire activity going on, but we still have it open for one reason or another, I'm still going to have to list minimal fire behavior because it's required in order for me to be able to even finalize a 209. And then I just go in and I write some kind of description of, no notable fire behavior. This will be the last report due to some other reason that this is still open. So the significant event in this column is what significant event is related to the fire behavior. So I think that's a big one that's not very clearly at all spelled out on the form. Same with this primary materials or hazards involved. This is looking for your fuel models. So your primary fuel model and then a secondary one. So I have to pick short grass. These are what I have to pick from. Short grass, timber, grass, understory, tall grass, chaparral, brush, dormant brush, southern rough, close timber, hardwood litter. Like there's no other options other than this. The one that will stop this from getting approved is when we list that there has been a structure burned, and then we don't list in this description any hazardous chemicals or any hazardous materials involved. So if a structure is burning, there has been hazardous materials, whether it is paint, if you listed that vehicles burned up in that building, if you listed propane tanks, gas, if a barn burned up, there was hazardous chemicals involved in some way, shape, or form. And so there's a team literally that sits up at the NIC that reads all these 209s. And they will send it back because a building burned and we didn't list hazards involved. So that's another big one that they'll send this back and want an edit on. And that's not very well. If you look at number 29, it's not asterisked as a requirement, and it doesn't really state what they're looking for. This on my side of what I'm filling out, this is what they're looking for. Then number 30, if it's applicable, this is where they're looking for the structures. Were they threatened? Were they damaged? Were they destroyed? And then if so, if we put something in here, they want some kind of little brief description that we burned. There was 2 residents. If we list the structures, were they garages? Were they outhouses? Were they pole barns? What were they? Something of that nature. So some kind of description in that box. So summary of the damages. I apparently put this together a little too fast because I didn't underline some of it. But so questions there? Anything in the chat?
Yeah, there was a question about being able to have the same options as what you see on your end in the program so that it gives folks some options. And best I can say to that is if you take that fillable form, scroll down to the instructions. I know none of us like to read instructions, but if you get in there, it's listed by box with better definitions and options that are available. So I will be the first to say that between the program and the forms, it's not very user friendly. A lot of times it comes down to having to make phone calls.
Yeah. And I was going to redo, knowing that it was like this far off and the instructions can get lengthy in the off season this year. I was going to just redo this form with drop downs and be like, okay, pick something that makes sense. So there wasn't as much back and forth, but we just didn't have a shoulder season this year to get some of this work done. So now you have this little PowerPoint PDF is what you'll have. And even if you're not reading the instructions, you can reference back and see what I see. And hopefully it'll help you get more in the rhythm of what needs to be in there to help you. It'll give you a visual aid. How about that? So then to the additional decision support, I think that this is laid out probably the best of the whole form as far as matching up. So pretty cut and dry. During this reporting injury, there's the public status summary. So if the public's involved, any injuries, fatalities, shelter in place, missing, trapped. If the responders are involved, same thing. It's going to keep a running total for you. You don't have to do this. You're only putting in a number during this reporting period. And then if there are any life safety or health threats, remarks, please list them in there. If there's weather concerns, remember your 209 is kind of painting the picture. If you do happen to need additional resources to be ordered into the GAC or mobilized into the state, and we get a little bit farther into the seasons and it gets more competitive to get our resources, they're looking at a piece of paper as the painting. So what we provide to them in the Intel shop, we get to prioritize. It's called priority decision making of our fires that 209s have been submitted on. And so we can say like the Foxfire is priority number 1 and the Brown Fire is priority number 2. And a lot of that is based off of what information we are giving to them in the 209 to paint the picture of what you guys on the ground are asking for. So keep that in mind. But if there's weather concerns, if the RH values are continuing to drop, we're in severe drought conditions, they just keep building off of each other. The box that almost all 209s forget to get checked is you have to check something here. Like if there is no likely threat to happen, then check there's no likely threat. If there's potential for future threat because you still don't have this fire perimeter secure, there's still evacuations that are in place, there's still a road blocked off, there's still restrictions in the area. Whatever it happens to be, you can check more than one, but something has to be checked. So the draft that the areas sent in to me gets retained because that has the signature of the area on it. The copy, if you notice, if you've been in an area that's submitted 209s, it goes up to approval because I have on file the 209 with the approver signature on it as the draft copy. The copy that actually goes in is not signed. So your draft copy, I can't really change too much on it because that is the official draft copy from the area. So I need you to be thorough about making sure that you're doing a pretty good, diligent job of filling out your 209s correctly. So the next one, 36, is not checked on your form. So again, highlighted because it is a required field on the actual reporting side of a 209. What is the spread potential? If the spread potential remains moderate on the right flank through the swamp and blowdown, or access remains a concern, but spread is low at the head and left because the aircraft got that out, like write that. And how does it progress, through the rest of the operational periods up to anticipated after 72 hours? Writing when you have, 6 aircraft working a fire and I pull up your report and everything is NA all the way through, are you sure that, in 12 hours when you sent me this report and you're only 4 hours into the fire, all of these probably are not NA yet because you probably don't even know what fuels you're burning in. But again, this is your report and I can help guide you, but I can't help write it for you because I'm not on the ground. But when I see nothing but NA through these, especially when there's aircraft involved, it's like, whoa, I mean, I'll typically make those calls to you trying to help guide you, but these are required fields on my side of the form. If there's a strategic objective of, where that planned end state of the incident is, feel free to write it. I encourage you to write them. 38, again, is a required field on my side of the program, does not appear required on the actual form, so I highlighted it on your copy. What are the threat summary and risk information? Gives you some kind of description here, but if you have ground resources out there, their safety is probably a concern. Anytime you have boots on the ground, there's a concern for their health and safety. Is there an economic threat? Is there a threat to the natural resources or the environmental resources? Are road closures? Are there evacuations still in place? But for sure, there's typically a threat to the life and safety of the resources that we have on the fire at minimum. So again, seeing NA written through all of these, there's typically some kind of risk out there when we are working in wildland fire. If you have boots on the ground, there's typically a risk. And then if you do have critical resource needs, like if there's access challenges, there's typically resource needs where if you've challenged your area to a max and you're pulling out of another area already, are you ready to continue with IA if you were to pop another fire? So there may be, be thinking more of that umbrella big picture when it comes to that. And what are those resource needs? Can you take on another IA? List those. List what you need. List that you need tracked equipment. List that you need additional bodies. List that you may need a CCM crew, a hand crew, if you're in heavy peats. list that you need aircraft if you still have part of the fire, torching through a swamp and you don't know when it's going to stop. Tell us what you need so we can be looking at these, because these also get sent up to agency admin that also view them to help you make decisions and make sure you're getting the resources that you need to your areas. If you have a strategic discussion, critical resource needs, again, identified above, feel free to fill it in. I highlighted it. Plans for the next operational period. Those are always great to know, as it helps admin help you plan, helps them get resources moved to you, helps them keep those MR shops, CCM crews on, things of that. The projected final incident size, this is not asterisk, but I guarantee that they're not going to approve it without this. They want to know the projected incident size. This is asterisk, not on your form. When is the anticipated containment completion date? There has to be a date in there. The projected significant resource demob date. Sometimes they'll approve it without it. Sometimes it's a hit or miss on that one, whether it'll get approved or whether they make me put a date in there. The estimated incident cost to date is a must. There has to be a number in there. The projected final incident cost, that's hit or miss, whether they'll approve it or make me put a date or an amount in there. If a fire code has been generated, it's going to auto feed out of CAD. So that will be fine in there. If you do have remarks, feel free to list them. I'm going to type them in for you. All right, now to the resource commitment summary. This is another big one. They want to know who is out there and committed to your fire. And it's broken down like this. I need to know every type 1 engine, type 6 engine, UTVs, low ground units, tenders, air attack platforms, seats. In Minnesota, our fire bosses are as seats as well. They're single engine air tankers. They just have scoops on them, but they are single engine air tankers. So they can also be listed as seats. Need type 3 helicopters, type 2 helicopters. It's all done by typing. Fuel modules, your engines are all done by typing. Tracked vehicles, water tenders, and the list goes on and on. There's probably like 54 different headers that I have, resources that I scroll through. And I need to know the first line is how many of them. The second line is how many personnel are tied to that resource. And so if it's the DNR, Fish and Wildlife, BIA, if we have out of state, they're technically our resource when they're here, so we can count them as Minnesota DNR. But like on the neighborhood agreement, if this was right on the Wisconsin border and they were working for Wisconsin, I'm just hypothetically speaking, and stayed with Wisconsin and just crossed the border to come help us for the operational period, we'd list Wisconsin in here as well. The fire departments are all listed separately, but this is what like a filled out incident resource commitment summary looks like. And then the additional personnel, if we had 12 people from a CCMI crew on there as well, I'm going to list them as additional personnel. So at the end, I'm going to have the total number of people, total number of equipment that are assigned to this fire. And that's what your resource commitment summary should look like on your 209s that are coming in. Questions there? Questions on 209s?
I still have the one question, Jolene. This is about, an engine pulling a track vehicle. It's only one person, and then just trying to grasp how to put not two people on it. So how do I do that on the 209?
What is the resource that actually is going to be used on the fire? So if they're pulling the track and they're not going to use the engine, they're actually going to be out there in the track, then put it down as a track.
Okay, perfect.
Right. Yes. But yeah, that's 209s in a nutshell. I've tried to give you the highlighted form. It's in your for the DNR dispatchers, it's in your Teams channel under dispatch forms. I PDF this slideshow and put it under your how-to guides to just give you somewhere where you can quick reference. If you come up with the question, at least without reading, or if you get a little bit confused, at least gives you the visual of what I'm seeing versus what you're seeing on your form to hopefully help you along a little bit.
Hey, Jolene, I stuck the form, the current version that's highlighted, onto the Minix page under the intelligence drop down for forms, as well as
Okay.
under the dispatch MNCC dispatch page under forms, GADs, and plans. So a couple different places, should be intuitive for folks to be able to
Perfect.
find it when they need it.
Awesome. So it's in 2 spots. Perfect. So they'll be known as C's, maybe even. Okay. Then the other thing that I do in the Intel shop is sit reporting. So they're 2 very different things. Sorry, I have a little bit of pneumonia going on over here, so I'm just going to cough it out for a few minutes and I'll be right back. So take 2 minutes. Okay, I am back. So sit reporting for all of you guys on the DNR side, you guys get by really lucky. Because I do all of your work for you, which is pretty nice. For the other agencies, they have to get me their information. So, in. All right. So the SIP program looks like this from my side. You've probably all seen a sit report. And if you haven't, I trained the last 3 days and we moved up to applying level 3, and I've been a little behind on my Intel work. So forgive me, but it can be found in the information center. So the final document ends up looking like this, where it lists all of the new human fires that are reported, lightning fires, and then our year-to-date fires. And it's broken down by agencies, so the BIA, Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and then by state, it's broken out by all of our unit IDs. And then it's broken into prescribed burning as well. So this is Minnesota's SIT report. So on the state side, I use FRBS to gather all of your information. So you can see also if we have large incidents going on. So why these are still showing up is the final 209s haven't been submitted yet on either one of these fires. So once a final 209 gets submitted, they will get taken off of the SIT report. So a final 209 on the Snake Trail or Doran WMM, can't talk, haven't been submitted through the Intel shop yet. So once they do, then I will submit that final 209 and then they'll get taken off of our SIT report. So they'll keep showing up until that takes place. So DNR, I take all of your fires out of fire reporting and billing. So now that we're using CAD, CAD feeds to InForm, InForm feeds to fire reporting and billing. So that's where there's a really big overlap of like my involvement with you guys at the area level is if I can get you guys using CAD correctly, it helps my job significantly because all of your numbers are dialed in and it makes reporting from the Intel shop super smooth and seamlessly. For the rest of the agency partners, they Forest Service also uses CAD. So they in the operations side, they've been entering their own numbers into the SIT report this year, which has been working out really well. So if they have a fire, they're entering it in right in operations. And then Fish and Wildlife Service, I talk with them a couple times a week and try to get any of their numbers from them on their wildfires. I'm entering all of their prescribed fires in for them to try to keep better tabs on that this year instead of having to do the last minute end of the year dump on all of their fire activity and catch up all the intel work on that at the end of the year. And then the BIA sends me an intel report that they have from Red Lake, and then DNR has been dispatching essentially for the BIA for the last 20 years, probably on paper. And now that we've gone to the CAD, it's all been running through CAD through the Minnesota dispatchers as well. So that's been helping streamline their numbers. So when numbers are reported, I go into the SIT report, enter the numbers, enter the acres, save the data. If there's corrections on the year-to-date statistics, I go in here, verify. So if acres were reported, higher off of the initial report, end up, going down, I can adjust by just going in here and entering that they mapped it now and it was only at 18 acres versus 20. I can make those corrections to try to keep our numbers reported correctly, because our numbers go to the GAC, and from the GAC, they end up on the National SIT report. And this is where, when I talked about incident priority, we have 209s out on these fires. And so from the Intel shop, I can assign a dispatch priority to these fires in an order in which we want resources to be committed that become available to them at the need that agency admin decides appropriate. So if I say agency admin wants the first available resources to be assigned to, the Overlook fire, then I say, come in here and say our dispatch priority is Overlook fire. Whatever resource orders we have for the Overlook fire, that's the ones that they're going to try to fill first. And that's all done through the SIT program. So that's the incident priority that gets pushed up through the GAC and through the NIC for that. And how that's determined through my side of the shop. And then for the planned RX report is the other big thing. This gets posted to the Minix website. You'll see this come out in the morning intel report. So this uses the burn plans that are submitted. And so I enter the agency information, the name that's listed on the burn plan. I won't submit this, but the grass fire or grass RX, the planned start date of the fire, number of days that they want to burn, the acres that they plan to burn, the strategy. So that's going to either be that broadcast or piles, and then the fuels that are involved. And then when they're entered into CAD now, I can look up the VOR. So that's going to tell that distance and bearing from an airport in case they need to put aircraft on it. I enter that legal lat. And then when I hover over it, it tells you in the narrative format, enter a list of all the resources you plan to commit to completing the project, including resources held in reserve. And so they really, really want this. And the reason being is because in order for a burn plan to be complete and approved, they're supposed to have contingent resources as part of their burn plan. So they want to know in their burn plan, what are those contingent resources that allowed that burn plan to be approved? And so if this planned burn ends up escaping and turning into a wildfire, what are the contingent resources that are going to respond first before we need to commit national resources to this RX burn? And that's what they're looking to have in these remarks. And when I end up printing or posting a burn plan, PDFing this report, it ends up looking like this. Where it's going to say that Bureau Indian Affairs out of Mille Lacs, the point of contact is Crawford, the resources, their contingency resources is a BIA squad personnel. It's located in Mille Lacs County. And this is a correctly done planned RX report following the criteria that they want. This document is posted on the Minix website. It's sent out to the daily report group. And in that daily report group, it goes to the Minix partners, it goes to the National Guard, and that helps them to also pre-position to help support us as well in case we need some of their militia, in case some of our burns escape. So that's kind of the side of that. So any questions about the Intel shop, what I do, things I produce, why I ask some of the crazy things I do out of you guys? Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
I'm hoping that on the prescribed side of things, and I've talked to Ryan about this, if there's a transition to capturing DNR burns in WildCAD, I would like to think that some of that double work will be reduced on your side, correct?
Yes, it will be. So that's part of the big reason I started entering the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service burns into the CAD for them, is because it saves me having to enter them into the SIT 209 program, is because it's getting sent into the GAC level through like their story map program, and that gets fed into the NIC. So instead of capturing it through 209, they're capturing it through a different database that they want to capture it through, and that they're hoping to get rid of this part of the 209 reporting program anyway, and transition and make us all go that way. And so in that log of those incidents, you're essentially writing that burn prescription. So the other agencies have to provide Intel with a 24-hour burn notice form, and it's asking them essentially all that same information that I have to fill out. And so in the log, when they start that burn, all that information gets put into the log before they can light that burn. And so all that information's pushing up to the GAC and to the NIC and filling that need. And it also shows up in InForm and is feeding up everywhere that they need it to. So if the DNR at some point from that prescribed burn committee in Division Y decides to go that route, hopefully this whole side of the program, and at some point the hand might be forced because this side of the program will go away. Because right now I'm taking all the information from the prescribed burn committee, or from all the prescribed burns division wide, that is being entered into fire reporting and billing system, and I take it out of there and I enter it all into the SIT program. So the entry work is already being done. It's just, where are we entering it? So yes.
Jolene, I think the other thing that there was some burning questions on that have been coming into the center was the CAD flow into fire reporting and billing, kind of how that all takes place. I don't know if it'd be a good spot to just hop in and show everybody, or how you want to do that.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. I knew that there was something else on my agenda.
Nope,
So
you're
thank
good.
you. Let me screen share again. Just going to jump in here, jump into Teams. I made this awesome one pager to help with that. Perfect. So that WildCAD to InForm to fire reporting and billing system. So great reminder that for the last few years, we've been pushing our ICs to enter as much information as they can into InForm. And so we are working a little bit on moving that backwards and getting them to communicate back with dispatch to start getting that information entered into CAD first. And so anything that you see on the left side of the screen or under that WildCAD tab needs to be entered into WildCAD first. Or if it changes, like if a location, they go out and they pinpoint the origin of a fire, the lat and long changes, it needs to be put into WildCAD because CAD is the umbrella, the parent that feeds all of the other programs. It needs to be updated in CAD to feed down to the other programs. So enter it in CAD and it will feed down to InForm. And then in InForm, they need to go in, add any of those additional responding agencies that are also showing up to help support, and then hand sketch that perimeter or draw a perimeter if they want it to appear anything more than the triangle. But for sure, if it's over that 10 acres, hand sketch that perimeter, go into InForm, and it's going to show that the injuries and fatalities are not a required field that they need to update in order for that incident to be certified. But having worked on the certification side of incidents, that has to be entered with a value of 0 in it in order for to feed into FRBS to be able to complete the fire into FRBS. So make sure that we're passing the message that that has to be entered with a 0 value. So 0 value, the injuries and the fatalities, the fire cause general has to be entered. And then the cause prohibited is a yes or no, that has to be entered. And then if the ICs want to enter cause comments, they certainly can into InForm without affecting it at all. Yes, Sarah.
When I was going through this, it looked as well like we needed to put into InForm ignition and initial response, maybe the fuel group and fuel model, and the residences destroyed or other structures destroyed or threatened.
I'll have to double check. I did not see that when I was taking the fire from start to finish, but I will definitely check and update this if need be.
Okay, thank you.
110 en route back to CAD.
So then when we take that fire, and I'm going to pull up FRBS and show you a fire of how one looks that needs more information entered into some of the other systems. Because when you pull up that fire into FRBS, you should only see these tabs left to be complete. Why is my computer acting stupid? reset. Anyway, when that locations tab should only have estimated start can't be blank and estimated or initial attack can't be blank. If you see anything more than that left in that locations tab, refer back up to this to see where that information lies, whether it's in the CAD side or the InForm side, and on whatever side it is, resort back to that program. It's typically going to be in CAD. Enter that information into CAD. Oh, shoot. Sorry, friends. Apparently, I'm on the struggle bus today. Is what I can tell you. Same with that primary fuels consumed, can't be blank. Initial report can't be blank. Fire behavior can't be blank. Responsible party can't be blank. Those should be the only ones left in that main tab. And then the no suppression costs, of course, that hasn't changed. You have to open that box, check that no suppression costs occurred, and then save it. If suppression costs occurred, you have to hit those suppression costs. And then in a lot of the areas we're having their ICs write summary of reports and attaching them as files into the fire reporting and billing system. And you can use your Wildcat incident run cards by PDFing that and attach that in as a file. That should suffice for your IC summary report. If your dispatcher is logging all that IC information, and you can attach that file in there instead of having your IC write a separate report. So when I pull up fire reporting and billing, I'm just going to pull up a War Road fire. We were looking at it yesterday. And so you'll see right out the gates, like out can't be blank, cause can't be blank. So both of those, this fire obviously hasn't been called out yet. But when you compare that then to that handout, the out and the cause both have to be entered into CAD. So you're going to want to jump into CAD, and both those have to be entered into CAD. If you enter them into InForm, you're going to keep getting the error because you aren't going to be able to close that incident in the CAD. One issue that we ran into for a fire that burned in the Park Rapids area and burned, and I shouldn't, burned onto Fish and Wildlife Service land is that the IC had gone into InForm instead of into the CAD, updated the Latin long, and it didn't feed through the systems. It caused an error because CAD is that umbrella program, and it messed with their like fuel and treatment program part of Irwin. And so all it took was an easy fix. We just had to jump into WildCAD, update the Latin long in WildCAD, and all of a sudden it fixed all the other programs, removed all the errors that needed to be corrected by jumping into CAD as that parent and feeding it all down through Irwin. So the big thing with that is, again, just remembering that CAD is that parent program to all of the other programs. So what were you thinking, Sarah? Because I want to take a peek so we can all learn.
So I was just sort of playing with this. Maybe I can share my little list that I made, if that works. Can I take control here?
Yeah.
Jolene, you'll probably have to stop sharing so that Sarah's able to share.
Okay.
Okay, hang on a sec. Okay, can you see this?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay, so this is my working document. But the blocks in InForm that are not filled by Wildcat, I have a list here. Ignition, discovery, initial response, fuel group, fuel model, injuries, fatalities, residents destroyed, other structures destroyed, other structures threatened, fire cause general, fire cause specific, cause prohibitive, and then a narrative. So those are the ones in InForm that you need to fill in. And then when it feeds to fire reporting and billing, the ones that if you fill in InForm, the asterisk ones should fill in fire reporting and billing. According to Annie, Synot incident commander doesn't fill in, and mutual aid wouldn't fill in as well. But you also would need to put in the initial report to DNR and a responsible party, primary fuel consumed, and fire behavior. So like I said, this is a working document. It may not be perfect, but was trying to throw it together so we could let our ICs know what they need to fill in, and we dispatchers what we need to get from them to put into Wildcat and then maybe put into InForm as well.
Right.
Was that helpful?
Yeah, let's go through that together, Sarah, and let's tighten up that list.
Yes.
And make sure, let's try it out on one of the fires that we have open. And let's get a good list together so we can update that document in our SharePoint for everyone to have.
Yeah, that would be great.
Or our Teams channel so everyone has access to it, because I just consider all those documents in their working documents. And anytime that there's a change to them, or we come up with something new or something better that works, I just delete the old one and put the new one in there. That's why I've been working those. So it's somewhere for everyone to go with the most up-to-date information. And yeah, definitely email out, share out, kind of thing. So let's take a peek at that, because I'd be really interested. I took the first fire of the year and we took it, Jake Froyam and I took it from start to finish, and completed it through all the programs, all the systems. So yes, let's look. Let's combine forces on this project.
Sounds good.
Love it. See, great minds always working together makes for the best. That's what I love about this little group of a cell. Anything else? Intel related, FRBS related, InForm, any other programs that I work in that I touch?
All right, thanks for that, Jolene. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording for this session.
Perfect. Thank you.